Hey, this is Brian from Wright732.com and fitin.com, and this is Daily B65. All right, so this is Brian from Wright732.com and fitin.com. I'm doubling up on the websites today because I need to get my traffic up. People, please go visit my sites, give me some comments, search around, see my stuff. There's a search in the upper right corner. You can put any topic you want. You can see if I've talked about it. Just give me some comments, give me some interaction. All right, so really important today. So you always have to analyze things. You know, your life is your greatest teacher. You really do know everything about yourself, you know, if you have been introspective enough, and it gives you the tools you need to be successful. And here's the thing. I'm really looking over my career, and I'm looking at my interactions with people. I'm looking at how I've lived my life. And the most important thing that I can throw out there for you is it's not just optimism and being positive, but it's being analytical and understanding, you know, the value of your life. So by staying positive and by being optimistic about things, it does allow you, no matter what you're going through, to see that there are other opportunities. If you get negative about the inability to achieve something in the first act of your life, let's say, you know, if you get down with your inability to achieve early on, you're going to shut yourself down for the future. But if you use your failures in the earlier stages to be the springboard for success later, or even use your success in the early stages to create the foundation for even greater success, it's always about building upon experience. So let's deal with the failure aspect, because the majority of us in our youth, or I'm not even going to say the majority of us, because I can't say the majority of us actually go for things that we're passionate about. Those of us that had a passion and a drive to do something early on and then gave up and sacrificed the norm or average to go after it, you know, that's a small percentage of us. I'm in that group. I gave up pretty much every aspect of normalcy to try and become a world champion in combat sports and to you know, get my artwork out there. Those are the two things. The combat sports is the primary, the artwork was the secondary. I always did both of them together, but I'm going to deal with how not being able to make it early created the opportunities for success that I have today, and then I have very strong examples of how other people have done that. So one of the main things I've found as a pattern is those that have hung on too long to that initial dream or idea. So let's talk fighting, because it's the easiest to understand. So every fighter I ever trained, including myself, that set out to be a world beater. You know, we all train, we do everything we have to do, we take the fights, we do it all, you know, but some of us are going to win, some of us are going to lose, some of us are going to get hurt, some of us are going to stay healthy. There's a million and one factors involved that allow someone to be a world beater, a world champion, where other people are going to fall short. But here's the thing. In the pool of us that fell short, and I'm going to throw myself into that because I never achieved the heights that I set out to, but I'm going to get back to why that's okay, is that those that hung on too long, when their bodies failed and the real reality of you're only going to go so far sets in, but you keep trying, these are the ones that are the most unsuccessful human beings I know. It's the guys that didn't have it in them to admit that they need to shift and they need to pivot into something else, that hung on too long, beat their bodies too hard, created, you know, damage that they're never going to recover from, and got too far away from opportunities to pivot successfully. I think everyone can pivot no matter where you are in life. I don't care if you're 26 or 66. I do think that you can pivot. But the stubbornness and the arrogance and the ego of a lot of people gets in the way of allowing them to pivot, because they set out for something and they've defined themselves as something for so long. They don't have the ability to say, okay, I was that, but it's going to be the fuel for me to do this. The guys that I've worked with, and it is what I consider to be my greatest success, is the fighters and the athletes that I've worked with that realized at some point that they kind of topped out where their career could go, and then they took the same energy that they had in this attempt at being a world beater, and then they applied it to their lives. And the other profession that they ended up pivoting into are the most successful people I know. They took the discipline and the focus and the energy that they created through combat sports, and they applied it to their family life and their jobs. It doesn't matter. I mean, I know guys that are electricians and plumbers, cops and firemen and roofers and teachers. Like, I mean, the laundry list of professions is endless that I've seen people transition into and be extremely successful because they have a grit, they have a determination, they have a discipline, they have an understanding of themselves that their coworkers don't necessarily have because they haven't pushed as hard as they have. So they shot for the highest of heights. And then at some point, they just didn't either have the skill, the knowledge, the physical ability, whatever. They just didn't have the ability to go as high as they wanted. But they never lost the enthusiasm. They never lost the skill set that they built. They never lost the understanding of self that climb gave them. And they pivoted into a other aspect of life, and they became extremely successful. There's a reason why fighters like myself, I am the prime example of this. I didn't get married until I was 39. I didn't have a kid until I was 40. We tend to give up our youth because of our dreams and our passions, and then we find a great success in the second act. So when we retire from the combat sports, which is not like retiring from a corporate job, I can do this for the rest of my days, but I can only physically fight for so long. I mean, my teeth don't touch. I got a bad jaw, a bad neck, a bad back. I've had 4 knee operations. My hands are kind of screwed up. My brain's probably a little scrambled too. But I mean, I have a lot of physical problems that made me, between 30 and 34, really get a handle on what I was doing. And I would readily admit that I was lost at the end because I didn't know how to transition the value of my career into my next profession. And forget about just combat sports. People I know in corporate, in retail, in law, whatever. I know a lot of people that set out to be something professionally that they weren't satisfied doing, or they weren't as successful as they set out to be, and then they kind of reconnected with their passions, but with a more mature outlook, and then pivoted into other fields or other aspects of even the industry they're in, and they found great success. So it's never over. If you have the ability to translate your previous history into a workable skill set, you can create a really strong future for yourself. So having the ability to stay positive no matter what the experience is, so that you can find value that you can carry forward, that is the key. So that you're not a failure because you failed earlier on. You're going to be a failure if you didn't learn from that failure to create future success. So micro failure, macro success, that's the whole thing. Staying positive so that you can see opportunity that comes your way. Being ego-free enough and strong enough to let go of, let's say, passions of youth and apply that skill set with maturity to the next act, that's everything. So I have the ability to outwork pretty much anybody in the field that I go into because I know how hard I can push myself. And nothing that I can run into in business will ever be as hard as what I physically have put myself through in my earlier combat sports career. It's just that simple. So for me, Will Smith talked about in a thing about how, he's willing to die on the treadmill to beat you if you're running on it next to him. I feel like I have that same ability because I've actually pushed myself. He's speaking of it metaphorically. But I actually can talk about it from a practical experience where I can say, you know what, after not physically doing something for a while, I've just gone and I've smashed guys half my age because I just am mentally tough from all the stuff I put myself through when I was younger. So for me, again, those things that I was not able to achieve don't matter anymore. Because in the process of trying to achieve them, I figured everything out for myself that I need to know. And you're doing it too. But it's identifying that and embracing that knowledge and accepting your true strengths and not worrying about the things you didn't do or the things you can't do, but figuring out what you've actually done and applying that to today. That's where you're going to really create the value. So I went a little bit around on that, but just learn from this lesson. The guys that hung on too long and refused to learn so that they could apply today are the greatest failures I've ever known. I have like 5 guys in particular that are just messes of human beings today because they just never got over the reality that they couldn't be the person they set out to be when they were younger. But the thing is, they actually can be the person they set out to be, but just in a different format than what they thought. But they just can't allow their ego to get out of the way to allow that to happen. But then the other side of it are the ones that, they were striving for greatness in one thing, and they realized that the greatness was actually available in another, and they pivoted and they went to that, and now they have that greatness. I'm not talking about creating CEOs. I'm not talking about creating billion-dollar people. I'm talking about taking guys that, if you look at on paper what they should be capable of achieving, they've blown past every limitation that was ever told they had because they learned enough in, say, combat sports and physical conditioning and pushing themselves so that they can blow away all those people that had the better educations and the better pedigrees and whatever, because they're just not tough enough. They don't have the endurance. They don't have the positive attitude. They don't have the creativity. They don't have the longevity. They don't have that, thing that can't be taught, that can only be learned through the work that athletes have. Failed athletes, I hate saying failed, but athletes that never achieve the height that they were looking for can be the best, grittiest, nastiest, hardest producing people that you could ever use in your business going forward. So you don't always want to look for the guy with the gold medal. You want to look for the guy that was striving for the gold medal, and then you never see him stop working, but you see that the light bulb goes off and they go, okay, I need to apply this differently. That's the value. That's the employee that I want. That's the person that you're going to want. And if you're that person, that's the person you need to pivot and be. So instead of sitting around and crying about the belt you don't have or the trophy you didn't win or the title that just didn't come to be, recognize the value of striving. And now take that and put it into the next phase. Be the best father, the best husband, the best whatever it is you set out to be. Because you have the discipline, you have the endurance, the grit, you have those intangible qualities that the average person doesn't have to the same degree. Somebody that's been on the tip of the spear and has put themselves in a ring or a cage or on a mat against another human being and gone one-on-one. That's why soldiers are so valuable. People that have seen combat understand the real value of life because they've risked their life. People that have put themselves in a ring or a cage to fight another human being that's been training to hurt them really bad understand how to deal with stress and pressure and how to push themselves more so than a person that's never had to have a confrontation of that sort. So you can have all the verbal arguments you want. You can have all the business meetings you want. You can have all the courtroom appearances, accounting meetings. You can do whatever you want in the mental property sphere. But you're never going to be able to compare with a person that's physically put themselves on the line and they've really looked an end in the eye and they've challenged themselves at every level. Because I'm telling you, physical challenges will challenge you spiritually, mentally, and physically. It's no joke. When you push yourself beyond, you hit every aspect of who you are. And if you can do that at some point in your life and really come to terms with who you are and what you're really made of, you know exactly who you are and where you are and what you're doing every day. So that's the value of your youth. If you pass that by, if you could be 25 and blown your knee out and not able to function the way you did 6 months ago, you still have the ability to pivot that experience into the next phase. I've got a guy who jumped out of a plane in Afghanistan when he was 20 years old and he broke his back as an airborne ranger. He's now a CPA going into the FBI. He pivoted that experience of being an airborne ranger, which he thought he would be as a career for the rest of his days, and it was taken from him like that. Gets through airborne school, goes to Afghanistan, like a year and a half, 2 years into his military career, breaks his back, gets a rod put in, and is physically unable to do his job anymore. So he had to pivot. And he did it well. And he's very successful now. That's just one sitch. There's so many out there. So whatever you feel you've lost, you really haven't lost. You've actually gained. You've gained the experience to create the foundation for your future success. Stay positive. Be optimistic. Stop crying in your beer about what you didn't do. Transition that into the energy you need to create what you want. Done. Have a good day.